Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video, we're going to go over another set of Warcraft logs that you requested me to check out. Thanks to a few tips in the comments from the last LE log review and the last enhanced log review, I think it'll keep on getting better and better as you all are asking me to review others. Now, I would also recommend for those people that are submitting to check the comments below. Maybe I missed something. Maybe someone does have a tip. And this is the smartest YouTube and Twitch chat around, so they could have some thoughts. We're also doing this on stream a lot now, so it's something for you to consider. Now, this set of logs, and I'll put everything down below in the comments in case you want to look into this for the community as well, or, you know, jump in the Discord, send a link to me. We have a lot of other kind of resources and people asking questions about rotation. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and jump into this. Totemore. Here we go. Now, this is his logs. This is heroic, right? It looks like he's in the 30s, 40s, the green area. And usually we've been going over Shriekwing, not Shriekmaw, like I kept saying in the last video. All those links are down below, by the way, to the other videos. But what we'll start with is maybe a little bit different fight. We'll start with Council of Blood and look at that log, compare that to the top logs. Then we'll also go back to Shriekwing, because Shriekwing is really a boss fight where it's single target for a set amount of time. You have a phase where you have chill time. You come back to the boss. And now that you guys have helped me, I can show you how to do this in a very easy way to compare your logs, way easier than putting the side-by-side windows all over the place. So this is how you do it. Basically, we'll just do it from scratch. We'll go down and I'll click on the Council of Blood. You can see that he has a few logs here. We'll go into his latest one and his highest one, which is 2.3k overall. And remember, this boss fight, and like every boss fight in Castle Nathria, it has a different flow of combat, different number of mobs. This boss fight, you have 3 bosses, and you want to focus down one at a time. Every time the boss that you're focusing gets to 50% health, there's the dance mode. Then everyone goes and dances, right? And that is kind of a chill period of time. And we can see that here in the actual flow of damage that's coming out of the boss fight. So you can see, you know, there's downtime for the dance, there's downtime for the dance. So anytime a boss hits 50, so you're going to get 3 of these dance phases, right? So you can see here's everybody. I'll go down and it actually doesn't matter if I click him right here. But what was shown to me before is if this is the log I want to compare, I can go up to compare in the top right. This can be a good starting place for me. Now there's a few different options, but I will use this bottom option, basically saying I want to compare the DPS for Totemore, click, and it's going to compare it to a log that has similar fight length, raid size, item level, and time range. These are all important factors to really say if you're comparing apples to apples instead of having like a boss fight that's 2 minutes shorter, because it's not really comparable. So let's go ahead and say, you know, that's fine. So I'll search. This will search and it will come up with a list of other logs that are, you know, the top however many. And so if we do this, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to select a new log. So we'll go down here. Yep. So you can see item level is around his item level. Duration around the same. So what we'll do is we'll take this second individual because it's US, so we'll be able to read it. Click that. Now it has both people. So now what we're able to see is that we'll start again kind of similarly to what we did before. We'll compare kind of the flow. We'll kind of look at it from a high level. We'll say, what does the damage flow look like? What are our guesses of what we need to be focusing on? We'll go through the stats, the trinkets, and all that stuff. And then we'll go into the casts, where I think that's really the key part. And doing it this way is way easier than I had done it in the previous videos. And if you guys do like this content, make sure to put down in the comments if you want to see more of this, specific boss fights, or what you would like to see. And if you do like it, consider hitting that sub button as we're getting closer to 50K. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll go ahead and let's take a look at the lines. Now, it looks like purple is the kind of the #1 parse, while my buddy is Totecore down here. So what we can immediately see, and I think this is going to be a common trend, is that the purple bar here is the line is going way, spiking way higher in DPS. And so this is going to be pretty common, I think. And I think this is where a lot of people need to focus a lot of their attention. How are you opening for that fight? Because I already looked at these logs, right? And I was able to see in the summary that they're the same exact build. They're the same exact conduits. While Unruly Winds is a little bit higher on #1 parse. The gear is roughly the same. They have different trinkets, Dreadfire and Hateful compared to Stone Legion and Overcharged Anima Battery. But in general, their gear's roughly similar. If we look at their stats, right, crit, the #1 parse has a lot more crit than my boy. Haste is less than here, than my friend. Mastery as much is actually a bit more as well. Verse is a little bit less. So it looks like my friend here, Totemore, is rocking mainly haste and verse, which is the P2P set of secondary stats, but I recommend you sim your gear. And if you have a different video on that, I'll put that down below as well. But you always want to sim your gear. You don't want to just look at what other people are doing. You don't want to just think someone said something. You want to go and simulate it, because that way, specifically with Doom wins, because it's coded in the simulation so specifically that you want to simulate all your gear options in your bags or from your vault or whatever it is to make sure you're getting the best possible. So in this case, it looks like you have very low crit. That's probably a big reason why your damage is lower. It looks like your mastery is a little bit lower, and it looks like you probably have probably too much haste. You could probably drop some for crit and mastery is my guess. But again, sim your character. That is the key. That's always the message whenever you ask. You don't even want to ask anybody, what's my priority? They'll tell you, they should tell you to sim it yourself. They can give you a rough breakdown, but yeah. So let's go ahead and go into this. Again, the damage breakdown, again, what we can see here is that we're seeing huge damage spikes coming out, DPS spikes coming out, going up to like 10K, almost 10K. From the number 1 parse compared to my buddy. Now look, you can even see right away a very slow ramping of damage, and it kind of tops off and then it goes down. And if you look, this is the dance phase where everyone's DPS goes to 0 because you can't damage during that phase, that kind of intermission. So because of that, what you want to make sure you do is you put all your stuff on cooldown. You want to make sure as much is on cooldown as possible, because if you look, this is about 1 minute or a little bit past a minute for the dance phase to kind of kick off. That means you can squeak in potentially 2 Doom wins, because Doom wins is on a 1 minute cooldown, right? You also want to make sure you get Ascendance on cooldown ASAP, because it's going to be 3 minutes before that's back up, and this fight was about 8 minutes, so you can get in Ascendance twice. So you want to line that up with your Doom wins, do that very early, and then get Doom wins back, then Ascendance and Doom wins together. You want to try to couple up, you want to try to line things up without losing too much DPS, like you losing the chance to use these abilities, especially if for an enhanced shaman if you have some free globals. But ideally, you'd like to line some of these abilities up, with, especially your cooldowns, your Doom wins, your Ascendance, your Potion, your Bloodlust. That's what you want to be lining up together. Now, let's go ahead and we can see here at a high level Wind Fury attack. We can see that your damage breakdowns are pretty much the same. Wind Fury attack, Storm Strike. Lightning Bolt, okay, he actually has Lightning Bolt higher than melee. You Lightning Bolted 36 times. He did it about 35 as well, which is okay. But that's interesting, right? That means that maybe he's Lightning Bolting a little bit more than you are as part of the rotation. Flame Shocks, I was actually going to look at that, because one of the things you have to remember is that there are 3 bosses, right? So there's 3 bosses, so you can get some cleave kind of fluff damage here, but it's not really great, right? Like, you don't want to intentionally go into this boss fight using Hailstorm, like the AoE build. You don't want that, because you do not want to be cleaving the bosses. As you kill each, all the health pools of the others reset. But with that being said, if the bosses are stacked on top of each other, this can allow you to do cleave. When you crash lightning and you storm strike and such, it can give you some more damage. Now, it's not that useful damage to cleave, but it has it can kind of like keep your momentum going. Now, if we look here in our buddies, you can see that he used Chain Lightning 17 times, which is an interesting ability to use in this fight. Like I mentioned, health pools reset. You might say to yourself, well, that's just padding. It is, but at the same time, it also reduces the cooldown of Crash Lightning, which can be useful during Doom Wind's windows. Remember, Doom Winds, the way to maximize Doom Winds is to use Storm Strikes, Crash Lightnings, and Sunders as much as possible in those windows, because those proc Wind Fury. No other ability that you have other than just your melee strikes will proc Wind Fury. So he could be using Chain Lightnings instead of Lightning Bolts to get that Crash Lightning faster, to spend that during his Doom Winds window. We'll have to see when we get to the damage logs, but in general, right, like, I'm not surprised that there might be some padding again, because people are trying to get good logs, and there's damage to do out there, but that's also something to think about. Now, let's just see if there's anything else. I don't think there's anything else to talk about other than Wind Strike here. It looks like you had 11 Wind Strikes off. He got 20 That is a big difference. You can see the damage difference of being 120k. You doubled your damage of Wind Strike. Okay. Melee hits. This is also something you can assess, like uptime. Looks like melee hits, you got a little bit more, 10% more, but that's not that big of a deal. Chain Harvest, 5 versus 6. Okay. Crash Lightning. So here you can do counts of things to see how often they got it out. But frankly, a lot of this is going to come down to your rotation and when you're using this stuff. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part. We'll go to buffs quickly because this is something that people will point out, saying, well, did he get Power Infusion, which is basically like a mini Bloodlust that's casting you from priests? But let's just go ahead and take a look. We can see, you know, Flask, well-fed, of course. We're just looking to see if that's here. It's not. Power Infusion is not here, which is a haste buff that can help you get better logs, right? But that's okay. That's a good thing that it's not here because it's easier to compare. Now let's go ahead and go to my favorite section, casts. Well, again, we'll go to timeline, and this is the way that this is viewed when you use this compare functionality. It actually makes it a lot easier. I was actually making it a little bit harder than it needed to be, though. That's okay. So again, we're going to go back, and we're always going to, no matter what class we're talking about, if we're talking about Enhance, Ellie, whatever it is, or if you want to try to send me a log for a non-Shaman spec, I might get flamed, but I'm willing to do this type of breakdown to try to help you as well. But the biggest part of most classes is the opener. That's where you see that bing spike out of the bat, which actually carries you and your DPS for a long time, averaging out to increase it in a big way. Now, what we can see here is at the bottom, this is the kind of the #1 parse. At the top is my buddy, my pal. What we'll try to do is we'll try to, we'll just shift over by like 15-second windows, right? So again, this is the opener, right? I'm gonna look at my friends. Looks like at 3 seconds into the fight, he hasn't done anything yet. My boy, that is bad. Because that other guy, he's already flame shocked wolves, which is going to give him damage, and he's getting ready to burst. Here, your opener is pretty slow, frankly, and yeah, that's not good. You need to be using your big cooldowns right off the bat, especially if this is when you're going to Bloodlust, which likely isn't going to happen yet. But if it was, that's when you want to be lining everything up. Also, because this fight is going about 8 minutes, you could use a combat potion off the bat to then use your second pots later. If you're progressing in this boss fight, your raid leader might tell you when to use a combat potion, which buffs your stats, right? And is going to control Bloodlust. Like, we didn't Bloodlust off the bat when we were progressing through this boss fight on Heroic. Remember, this is Heroic. But it's something you can think about, and knowing how long the boss fight is approximately going to be will let you know if you can do double potions or not. So let's go ahead and we'll just look at it again. So we'll see. My friend started off with a Flame Shock. Makes sense, but 3 seconds too late. You know, we can see down here he used it pretty much immediately. And then we can see just going in. And this is one thing I would say is, I see this with Enhancement Shamans, the logs that have been sent to me too, is that you start off kind of just like normal. Like, you start off and you're just like starting the normal single target rotation. No, you can't do that. Not only does that take away from getting your cooldowns out of the way so they go back on cooldown, so you get them up later, it actually is a painful way to start, especially on an Enhanced Shaman, where you are dependent on generating Maelstrom weapon stacks. When you get those stacks, it allows you to use Lightning Bolts, it allows you to use Chain Harvest, that stuff, and that can fit in and make your rotation much more smooth. So if you're just starting out with this rotation, you probably are going to run out of buttons, and there's like I just mentioned, there's a lot of reasons for that, but you really want to be careful to not do this. That's one of the reasons why starting out with Feral Wolves is so nice, because that will start to kickstart your Maelstrom generation. So here we see you just kind of start to do the single target rotation, which kudos to you. Single target rotation is what you want to do on this boss fight. If they are stacked again, you know, Crash Lightning, multiple targets gives you chances for resetting that Storm Strike, which is great. And you know, adds damage, but okay. So let's just, in the first 15 seconds, you Flame Shock twice, Storm Strikes twice, Crash twice. You didn't use cooldowns. You got to use cooldowns, brother. Let's go ahead and see what the #1 parse did. He did the typical opener. I've put this in all the enhanced log reviews so far in the Doom Wins videos. He opens out with Flame Shock, Wolves, probably as he's approaching the target, right? As he's running in, Flame Shock, Wolves, and then he does Storm Strike first, which there's a lot of people that are saying you don't need to do that. You could do this. But basically putting Storm Strike on cooldown, and then if you pop, he pops Wind Fury and then Ascendance. Ascendance will reset the cooldown of Storm Strike and make it into Wind Strike. Now, I frankly would switch these two. I think that he should be ascending before he uses Wind Fury, but that's just me. So yeah, he goes in Flame Shocks. He uses Wolves. He Storm Strikes, might as well spend it, generates some Maelstrom. And then he uses Wind Fury, Ascendance, and then this is where he's starting to pop off. He's using his Trinket, get that on cooldown. Wind Strike, it resets itself. He uses his Sunder. He uses Chain Harvest because he maybe didn't have another button. He could cast Crash Lightning. I'm not sure why he didn't. That would have procced even more Wind Fury damage, especially in Cleave. That would have padded the numbers. But again, Wind Fury, remember, this is where he gets 12 seconds of Doom Winds, 100% chance to proc Wind Fury. So you can see he's maximizing the Wind Strikes. He's dumping the Maelstrom when he gets to cap and Wind Strikes on cooldown. Okay. I do think he should have used Crash here. Let's see what he does next, right? So we're going to the next one, Lightning Bolt. He's using a lot of Wind Strikes. There's the Crash that comes out, but I think it might be out of the window. And we'll go to the next 15 seconds, right? The next 15 seconds, he dumps his Maelstrom. Maybe he had to run out for a mechanic. That's another thing. You kind of want to plan ahead. In fights like this, in the council fight, you might have to run out of the raid, or you might have to switch targets. You might have to do something at range as you're running towards them, like the Attendant or the ads that spawn. Or if you get, certain debuffs on you, where you get paired up with someone, you have to run out of the group. Those things, you might as well keep a stack of Maelstrom Weapon in case you get one of those debuffs. The other thing is you can use shocks during that period of time to make sure that you're filling your globals even if you're not on top of the boss. Those are some of the things you got to think about. Like, okay, I'm on the boss now. There's a mechanic that's coming out. You might as well make sure your melee buttons are on cooldown first. Then if you get the mechanic, unlucky, but you can keep doing DPS while moving. Now, again, we can see that our buddy down here from 15 to 30 is just continuing that. Now he's in the main rotation, right? He's using Storm Strike, refreshing Flame Shock, Crash Lightning. He's normal rotation. Very normal rotation. We see, okay, we go to my buddy. My buddy has not popped Ascendance yet. I don't know how many times he uses it, but he better use it twice. If he doesn't, he missed out on a big opportunity for damage. Maybe he's saving it for Bloodlust, but frankly, he has an overcharged Anima battery. If he uses overcharged Anima and he uses Ascendance, that's like a mini Bloodlust and with Ascendance, especially if you're saving Bloodlust for later. You want to couple these things together. You also want to get them on cooldown. Again, I don't even see Wind Fury out. Unfortunately, that means even your raid is losing out on that Wind Fury buff. So I recommend, again, you need to get Wind Fury on cooldown for Doom Winds. You need to get using that Ascendance lickety split. So let's go ahead and move on to the next 15 seconds, right? The next 15 seconds for you, looks like you're just kind of doing the standard DPS rotation, which is okay. But again, like, this is one of the reasons I think people say that Enhance is, I'm running out of globals to press. Well, you need to supercharge yourself with your cooldowns early in the fight. That can kind of carry you with some momentum, right? So you can see, Wind Strikes were still coming out below while you were just kind of still just doing the vanilla damage, right? So you want to make sure you're getting those cooldowns out. So let's go ahead and move over to the next 15 seconds from 30 to 45. And again, once we get to 60, we should see another Doom Winds right before the intermission, or we just see intermission. So again, same exact DPS rotations coming out on top, right? You're putting Chain Harvest. Now, if we look, did you already use Chain Harvest once? No, you didn't. That's another big cooldown you should be using very early. You want to get that on cooldown as well. That is a big damaging ability, right? So here we can see, Wind Fury is now being pressed. Now you just proc Doom Winds, my friend. You just proc Doom Winds. Storm Strike, that's good. You use Flame Shock, okay. Crash. You don't have a Sunder, though. So now I have a feeling you're going to run out of juice, right? So let's go ahead and scroll over a little bit. It's a little bit harder to see like this. I see you're kind of losing some juice here, right? So I made it a little bit smaller. I know it's a little hard to see, but basically what you did is you dropped Wind Fury, and then you started to. I have to go back to that point. One sec. Okay, you dropped Wind Fury. And then you started to just Storm Strike and do your normal rotation, but unfortunately, because you didn't line it up early with Sunder, in Ascendance, and your Trinket, which you kind of did here, you used Overcharge. You didn't get that repeating kind of spam procs, the opener kind of excitement, right? So you lose it. And then right here, you pop Ascendance after Doom Winds. Yeah, my biggest recommendation to you, you need to line up your cooldowns and shift them way earlier. You want to be using them as early as possible, because here you're kind of staggering them. And honestly, you're staggering them in the opposite order, which I would even consider staggering them. So here again, you can see in the bottom section, this is where the intermission starts because they must have got them to 50%. At the top section, you pop a sentence, you get 2 wind strikes off, and then the intermission happens. That means the bosses are not targetable. You have to go run to your spot, and unfortunately, you're wasting probably 50 to 60% of your ascendance here. Maybe you did it to try to push the boss, but frankly, you got to use your cooldowns earlier and assuming that that damage is going to be what pushes them way earlier anyway. So those are big things. Now let's go ahead. Let's see how you approach it when the boss fight resumes after the intermission. Now, again, you can see in the bottom portion, he uses mobility to go ahead and re-engage. He already knows he's got his Doom Winds back up, so he Doom Winds it. He uses Doom Winds off his Wind Fury, puts it down. After he Flame Shocks like a good boy, or like a good Shaman boy, puts down the Wind Fury, Storm Strike, Crash. You know, he starts using the abilities that have a chance to proc Wind Fury, and with Doom Winds, they have 100%. Storm Strike, Crash, Sunder, good for you. There you go. He's getting a ton of procs, and when you optimize the use of Doom Winds, you get way more Storm Strikes, which gives you more Storm Strikes, which gives you more Wind Fury. It all stacks together. This is a snowballing effect, especially for your DPS rotation. So let's go ahead and see. That's kind of what happens in the below. He gets, you know, I wouldn't have used Lightning Bolt here. I probably would have used Chain Harvest, but maybe it wasn't available. But that's that. Now over here in the top section, my boy coming in. He's coming in with the Ghost Wolf. Healing Stream is a totally respectable cooldown to use. Like, especially if you're running in, you're like, okay, here you go. You know, on your way in, you go ahead, you open up Storm Strike, you use Doom Winds. Now, unfortunately, I would recommend you switch these abilities. I would put Doom Winds first, and then I would Storm Strike, because when you get that Storm Strike, you're going to get Wind Fury procs, higher chance to reset. I would generally not use Doom Winds unless you have Storm Strike and Crash Lightning at least available. That is key to get as many resets as possible and to maximize that Wind Fury damage. Now here you use a Storm Strike, you pop Doom Winds, you don't have Storm Strike available. Unfortunate, you only have one button that could reset it. Use Crash, it didn't reset Storm Strike. Unfortunate. Now you're wasting kind of some time with it. You know, you're using your cast, using your fillers. Storm Strike again, unfortunate, doesn't get the proc again. So that's what I'm seeing. Okay, so we're seeing Storm Strike, Sunder. Hopefully this was in the Doom Winds window. Now it looks like you cast or attempted to cast or thought about casting Lightning Bolt. Maybe you didn't have quite enough stacks. That happens to everybody. But yeah, you don't want to cast Lightning Bolt ever. You only want to use it at 10 stacks. The one thing I would say I haven't seen either of these people do is use Frost Shock. That is like here you use Flame Shock, and then at 100 seconds, and then you use it again 6 seconds later. I'm not sure why both of you guys did that. Maybe you're Flame Shocking different Baroness. Yeah, okay. You're Flame Shocking different targets. Okay, that's okay. I would also only Flame Shock like an attendant, for example, if the attendant's going to stay alive for the duration of the Flame Shock. If he's not even going to stay alive for 12 seconds, you might as well Frost Shock, right? I don't think that if he's going to die very quickly, it's not worth a Flame Shock. It's probably better to just direct damage. Now, again, it looks like, yeah, so for example, these Flame Shocks might be like tab targeting all the bosses just for padding. Could happen, just saying. Now, again, now you're kind of in this basic rotation, right? We can see a lot of Storm Strikes coming out from bottom. The top section, not as much. Maybe this is looks like you got a debuff on you. So again, this is a different boss fight. You have mechanics coming out, putting you into tough situations where you have to run away from a melee boss. You have to get out of there. You have to switch to adds. You got to do all that. So you have to think about what's going to maximize the damage. When you get a mechanic, you also think about what's going to blast those mobs down. Is a Flame Shocking on 50% add worth it? Probably not. I know you didn't do that here, but I'm just saying these are the things to think about. Now, okay, here again, we're seeing, you know, Wind Fury being dropped. I don't even think that was a minute, though, before your last one. Nope, it was 30 seconds. So that did not proc Doom Winds. And again, you know, this is kind of just basic rotations. Yeah, you don't want to cast unless you absolutely have to. And maybe you cast this because you had to stand away or something. And that's okay, but generally, yeah, everybody knows, right? We don't want to be casting. So that's that. And then I see Doom Winds coming out again. Now, again, I don't know if this was proccing Doom Winds, the buff, but yeah, again, you want to make sure you have Storm Strikes, Crash Lightning, and potentially Sunder up to line those up. So that's what I'm seeing here. I don't need to go through every minute here, but those are the trends I'm seeing. Again, the opener, big. Lining up your cooldowns early on, getting them out of the way, big. Also, making sure that when you use your cooldowns, you have your other abilities that are ready to go. You want to make sure you're putting these things on cooldown before the intermission phase of this fight. And in general, in fights where you have 30 seconds of doing nothing, or 30 seconds of hiding, like in Shriekwing Mythic, or you have 30 seconds of doing a dance, you want to make sure that you don't have those 1 minute cooldowns on cooldown. You're up. You want to make sure you spend them as fast as you can, so that is a recovery. That's a recovery period for you, so you can get those abilities back. So something you have to think about. Now let's look at your Ascendance again. And now again, it looks like Ascendance was not lined up with Doom Winds. Again, you got to do that. You can see, you know, it kind of comes out like a limp noodle. If you don't line it up with your oversized battery, if you don't, which actually you can, every other oversized battery can become a boost for your Ascendance. And then in the bottom section, you can see he uses Wind Fury, Ascendance, and lines it up. And you can see you got 2 wind strikes out, and like that's it. And then you had to do a lot of mobility, unfortunately. He got Ascendance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and like massive damage spike here. And if I know if I looked at the chart, it would look that way. And again, you know, your dances are at different points, but yeah. So I think that's the biggest takeaway here. Practice on a dummy. Like, be like, this is my opener. I have to do this. The other thing is to think about it, like, what am I have to do before as the countdown's going from 10, pre-potion, about to use Feral Wolves, Flame Shock. Make sure that all those things are going on. Now, I think that's all that I have for this log. I think that this is going to be the same thing that we see in Shriekwing. I'm going to switch over to that very, very briefly because this is already turning out to be a long video. But I bet if I look at this, here it is. I already had it prepped. Again, I see Purple, who's the #1 parse, right? He has huge damage spikes compared to yours. And I'm not being mean. We're just trying to help each other out, you know? Trying to help you out, make sure you're going. And you can clearly see these spikes are doubling your damage. And these, oh, that's not even it. Sorry, this is even worse. The #1 parse is times 3 for your damage. That's all about lining up that opener. That opener's key. Everyone can work on theirs, but it's kind of the bread and butter to how you get a good parse, how you get more damage. It's going to carry you out. So let's go ahead and look at it one more time. I'm sure it's going to be exactly that. We can see, okay, you open up with the Ascendance, you start wind striking. Okay, then you pop Doom Winds. Yeah, brother, you're going to have to line those up more. 3 uses of Doom Winds. Okay, so again, you got to line these up. I recommend that you follow this burst in the bottom. Replace his trinkets with yours. Potion and Bloodlust lining up like him. Literally, you can follow his button presses, and you will meet this damage. It's not like chance, right? Like some of it's chance with procs, and if you get like a power infusion from a priest, but this is not chance anymore. This is get your stats exactly the same, press the same buttons, you do the same damage. So all it takes is practice and getting comfortable on a dummy and then bringing it to the raid. So you can see Flame Shock from a distance, the wolves, and a trinket being used as he's running in. He uses Bloodlust, or Heroism, Potion, and then he goes into the pump. He uses Ascendance, Wind Strike, which keeps on cooldown. He pops Doom Winds, which procs, he had an Ascendance proc somewhere. Wind Strike with Doom Winds. Crash Lightning, Doom Winds. It's getting all these procs, and it's using all the Doom Winds abilities. Maximizing damage like that. Now, I would say he probably should use Chain Harvest earlier, but dude, this is it. Look how many wind strikes he has, and then it goes into basic rotation. But look at these logs. Let me know what you think down below. I hope this is helpful to you. If you have any questions, or if you want me to review your logs in a similar way, I'm sure that there's similar trends here, but if you want me to dig into yours in a specific boss fight, I'm willing to do it. And if you want me to try to do this for a different class, I'm willing to do that too, because I know not everyone's a shaman, but some of these tips on how to compare your logs, I think is big, especially for trying to make non-top tier classes still shine. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hit that sub button and that like button if you like this content. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.